reached out to you and said, help me. And here you are, helping me. Yeah, you and I have shared some similar journeys in our life. And when I started to wake up to the idea that I was had toxic beliefs in my life, a delusional worldview, I wanted to reach out to people who I think could understand maybe where I had been, where I was going, and I thought of you. And so here we are. My vision and what I feel called to do is to help other men. And I think you've done the same in your life.
Oh. Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I'm an excellent faker. I excel at being a hypocrite, because growing up in the church, I knew how to walk the walk, talk the talk, ran a ministry where I went all around the world filming for nonprofits and missionaries, and I said to myself, I've got it made, right? But there is a secret sin that the church does not like to talk about.
That's right. And
specifically, just calling a spade, is pornography. It's sexual addiction. It's masturbation. It's this self-sex, as C.S. Lewis calls it. And so for the longest time, I was in denial. I was like, no, I'm good. I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. Maybe I'll read the Bible more, or maybe I'll go on more mission trips, or just turn on worship music when I'm getting tempted, and it'll all magically go away. Like, it just goes away, right, Jody?
Yeah. No, it just gets worse.
It gets worse,
it just gets worse. The more we run from those things, the more they build in us, right? And I realize that for me as well. And one of my coaches actually calls me a shapeshifter.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
And something I've also learned is I've got this ego that is the showman. And so in the showman, which is one of my parts, he'll show up to try to attract people to like me, right? Because it's one of those deficits as a child that I was missing. I didn't have an available caregiver all the time. So when you learn to take care of yourself, that's when you start to build these narcissistic traits, these things that I have to do for me that nobody else will, which ends up being fairly unhealthy.
So it's fascinating how God, it cares for us way too much to just leave us in our own sin.
That's right.
So what was the breaking point for you?
Oh, that's a deep one, my friend.
We're going to jump right into this here. All right.
Breaking point. Well, I've been married for 18 years. I have the most amazing wife in the world. Love her to death. And no matter what she could do or would do, it was never enough. Just tell a little bit about my story. I was molested / raped at a very young age, 5-ish. Whoa. My mom had to travel out of town. I was left with a family, and bad things happened. Well, unfortunately, I buried that. I thought, I'm a bad person, I've done these bad things, I can't tell anybody. Well, and that created, what I know now is that created this place of shame and guilt. And it's what they call, what Dr. Minwalla, Omar Minwalla, calls the secret sexual basement. And it's when we create this secret universe in our mind that exists only in our world. Nobody else knows about it, right? And so, as I got older and was introduced to pornography and started masturbating, that shame just grew and was extremely unhealthy. So fast forward to I'm married, I've had kids, life looks good, I'm successful, I've built businesses, I lead teams, but I've got this secret sexual basement that I've built all these years. And that basement is completely centered around my shame. Because nobody knows the things I've done, right? And so the only way that basement continues to grow is by living in that place of shame and guilt. And eventually it got to the point where, I was doing things that I was really, really even more so ashamed of than just self-pleasure. I'm acting out in ways that, having an affair, for instance. And when my wife finally discovered that secret, and by the way, I just want to give a plug to women. They have this second brain gut that exists. I know you know what I'm talking about. This intuition. Most men tend to gaslight their wives, coerce their wives into thinking that that second brain intuition is false. And
what's an example of this? What do you mean by?
My wife would come to me and she'd be like, something doesn't feel right. Are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. Or I get this feeling that you're up to something that doesn't feel good. No, what are you talking about? Like, what makes you? You're just afraid. Your mom, when she raised you, she just put this in your brain that men are X. Well, so that's that gaslighting that I was fully engulfed and engaged in that world. Right. So,
and I could so empathize to that where. I've got my act in order, and then I realize that I'm letting in all this spiritual darkness into my household, and my wife is getting these migraines, and she's going to counseling and therapy, and she's just like, something's not right in our household, and that gaslighting. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know what? Let's try a new prescription here. And really, the issue was me. I was the one letting this darkness into my household. And one thing is that out of all of my vices and characteristics that you might think are good or bad, I am fiercely loyal. And so if you start hurting my wife, I will change and I will fight tooth and nail. Me, I don't really care. Like, okay, I'll let myself wallow in my own sin, but once it started to affect her, as evidenced by this intuition, as you're saying, coming out saying, Bo, something's not right, that was my breaking point.
Right,
where I was like, I gotta do something. This isn't just about me and my secret sin or my basement, as you said.
Yeah, so my wife discovers that I've had this affair.
Oh, wow.
And so we go to therapy, and this is where kind of the shame starts to rear its ugly head. However, we entered into this world of sex addiction, the sex addiction space, and that's a whole other topic because I don't like to call it addiction. In the DSM, it's compulsive sexual behavior, right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, we go to what I consider a therapeutical abuse. And that's where our marriage therapist and my therapist is essentially blaming my wife for my behavior. And and I bought into it, hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, if you gave me more of what I wanted, I wouldn't have done this, right? And so it's one of those, like, it's another delusion. And I went and got help, we got help, and things were looking good, but then I started to, like, no matter what she did, I was still feeling this pull to go back to acting out, which is truly an ego, number one, thinking that, hey, this behavior is okay. Somewhere back in there, this is the way I medicate. This is the way I numb out. And it got to a point where not only was I going back to the behavior I was doing, but it wasn't until about a year later that my wife discovered that, actually it was a little more than a year, it was about a year and a half, she discovered that I was still doing these behaviors. And that's when I had like this aha moment, right? Where I was like, wait a minute. My wife has made all these changes, and here I am doing the same old stuff.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was like, big mirror.
Yeah.
Big mirror. Like,
I am the
right
common denominator here.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not hers, maybe it's me.
Yep, big mirror, looking at myself, and that was like my wake up where I had to like really go deep. And for the first time in my life, I mean, I was 49, about to turn 50.
You've got your life in order.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah.
You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Not true. It began this journey, and I'm an intense person. Like, I'm a just driven, highly motivated individual. So for the first time in my life, I was like, instead of being external, was going internal and being like, I've got to figure out what is driving this world where this is okay to betray somebody and hurt somebody. I mean, I was having massive pain for myself, but also my wife, and being like, how could I do this to her? Which is, again, still living in a place of shame.
So you keep going back to shame.
Yeah.
What is shame? Could it not be argued that this is just a natural physiological phenomenon, that you're hardwired this way, and it's society that's placing this shame on you? Why don't you just embrace these feelings? Why don't you just go off and
Have you ever seen a
around?
Have you ever seen a 5-year-old have shame? You've got kids. When they're little,
yeah,
they got no shame in their game. They'll streak around naked. They'll piss over in the bush, right?
And so couldn't people say that's the natural thing to do?
That's their authentic self. They're being their authentic self
They haven't figured out how to lie yet.
They haven't figured out the control and deception piece in life of lying, but they also haven't developed the ego that says that's not okay.
Interesting.
And so as children start to adapt those egos, it's kind of like their hardwired programming that they're building as they see everything their parents are doing, what they see on TV, what they see through the media, their peers as they start to go to school, and it creates this framework for who they are and who they identify with. And so shame is in my unprofessional, I'm not a psychologist with any training. In my unprofessional opinion, shame is a place where we should not live. We should use that as motivation to learn to be more vulnerable, show empathy, and all the things that took me 49 years to discover.
Right. And that is so key with, I can get on the internet right now and in 5 seconds look up a peer-reviewed piece in a journal that says pornography is totally natural. Masturbation is just what you do. I just saw on TikTok, it's like, oh yes, you should do it daily. It's so natural for you. Well, then why do I feel shame? It's even non-Christians, those who haven't grown up in that moral construct of the church, that you could say, well, that's why you feel shame, Bo, because you grew up in the church. No. Even my non-Christian friends don't celebrate it. To use your previous example of the little 5-year-old running around naked and peeing in the bushes, why aren't they running around posting on social media, wow, I just had the best masturbation episode of my life? Why aren't they not posting that on Facebook? Because there's that shame. So even that alone is, I believe, a fantastic argument to get your life in order, to put on your big boy pants. And so what did you do to put on your big boy pants?
Well, first I had to realize that I was a 12-year-old living in a man's body. I had not progressed past this childlike mentality. Selfishness, entitlement, disconnected to myself, which is huge. Like when my wife and I first started going to therapy, the therapist would be like, so tell me, what's coming up for you? What are you feeling? What are your emotions telling you? And I was like, huh? What are you talking? I'm angry. I'm frustrated. Those are my 2 words. That's all I had. I had nothing beyond that. And as I started to learn and connect to my triadic core, this whole part of me, I started to feel like I feel this anxiety, right? Or I feel this ickiness in my stomach. Like that's an emotion, that's an emotional response that I'm having. And so it was kind of this awakening that all happened, synonymously with my true self as I started to discover, who am I?
So you're saying step 1 is identification, the ability to put a label to it rather than just this vague, I feel angry or I feel frustrated that my wife isn't putting out for me.
Let me just stop you there. Yeah. The first thing that I think any man who is struggling with pornography, acting out, compulsive behavior, is to stop blaming other people. Because we are the only ones that control what we do. Nobody else has got the strings and controlling us. Only we have to take that ownership of I did this, I'm causing this, these are my issues, rather than it's my wife's fault, I'm too stressed out, I'm worried about money, my kids are stressing me out, whatever it is, those are all external things that affect us, and we have to understand how they affect us. But at the end of the day, it's my decision. So to me, that's taking that accountability and ownership is the absolute first step.
Interesting. Isn't that actually the first step in 12 steps? Is acknowledging I am an addict. I have an issue.
I believe so.
Yeah. It's like it's giving you a target to aim at, because if you don't acknowledge that there's a target, what are you going to aim at in the first place?
That's right.
I know this one person who you do not know, nor does anybody out there in podcast land know this person. Don't worry, but she has a problem with getting fit. And that is her battle, that is her demon, but she doesn't even acknowledge it as a demon. It's just something natural, and so she's in this spiral of confusion and shame and anger, saying, maybe I was born this way. And she's not realizing, no, it's because when no one's looking, you go and you raid the refrigerator. And maybe it's self-medication, there's something deeper, I don't know, and nor is it my place to try to give her direction on that, because I'm not a medical professional. But what I do know is she doesn't acknowledge it. And so there's this confusion. It's like the first step is just say, I'm a messed up person. I am controlling these own puppet strings. I am not a victim here. I need to take responsibility. And then, once you acknowledge that,
that's right.
What's the next step?
Yeah, for me it was compartmentalizing all the different pieces of me that are broken. So this is a great analogy that was taught to me, and I love this. If you could picture or imagine a set of railroad tracks, and on that first set of railroad tracks is our train. And then as we gain knowledge in life, we've got another set of tracks over here, but there's a break in between the tracks.
Sure.
So if we're a train on that track, we have to stop. We can't just jump the tracks. And so what that gap is a gap in our knowledge, a gap in our learning, and we can't bridge that gap until we focus on that part that's missing, right? And so we have all these sets of tracks out there, and we have to bridge all. So for me, I had to identify all of the places that I was missing those components, and it was a lot. Integrity, huge problem for me. And when most people think of the integrity, they think of just lying or stealing. Integrity is so much deeper than that. Martha Beck, phenomenal author, wrote the book The Way of Integrity. And the whole concept follows Dante's Inferno. And Dante, the idea is you have to go through hell to come out of hell and get into purgatory and then to the promised land. And so going through the darkness to come out of that, integrity, and I'm getting a little off there because it's an amazing book.
It's fascinating.
But the concept of integrity is, and I promise you've done this. Someone's walked up to you and said, "Bo, how you doing today?"
Oh, I'm fine.
Were you fine? Were you truly fine on every occasion you said I'm fine? Probably not.
Now, maybe in fairness, in passing, sometimes I don't want to bare my heart and say, oh, well, I've got this rash back here. Maybe they don't want to know that. Maybe it's just a social nicety here.
But you don't have to go into depths. You could just say, man, I'm having a rough day and I'm kind of sad.
I gotcha.
And that's being an integrity to yourself.
Gotcha.
Because when you speak something different than how you're feeling, it creates a disconnection inside.
Oh.
And so being in integrity to yourself is for me was a huge realization to be vulnerable. Brene Brown in her book Daring Greatly talks about this. When we are not vulnerable, we automatically go to a place of shame. You look at like most women, they have this perception, I have to be perfect, my house has to be clean, my kids have to be perfect, I have to have this whole perception that I give off. That's not being in integrity of who you truly are.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So I'm going back to scripture here because as I think of all of these examples that Jesus had where he healed people and he rescued them, it always seems to stem from someone being real, someone being authentic, having integrity of themselves. Not being perfect, not having their act in order, not being a flawless Pharisee who follows the law. As a matter of fact, he cussed those people out, those who weren't authentic.
That's right, yeah.
Well, by society's standards, they're perfect. But it was the woman who was real, who pushed through the crowd and touched the edge of his cloak, or the woman who was caught in adultery. Everything was stripped away. She was her authentic self. And that's really what Jesus asks of us is, first of all, be real, guys. Would you say there's a difference between shame and guilt?
Huge difference. And I'll even go a little farther. Shame is, I am a bad person. I have done bad things. Guilt is, I'm a good person and I've made bad choices, okay? So that's a really good designation between the two. We want to feel guilty. If we didn't have guilt, we would probably not care about anybody else
That's
about
true.
ourselves, right?
And guilt is a great motivator.
Guilt is a great motivator, but we only, it's a brief stop.
It's a brief, exactly.
Yes, we don't want to live in shame ever. We don't want to live in guilt. We want to move to remorse.
Right.
Remorse is, I wish I could go back and change it. I can't, but if I could, I would. And that is coming from a place of, oh, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I did really bad things. I wish I could. I wish I could have changed that. I would change it if I could. And that's like coming from the heart, right? That's empathy.
Right.
I know I've done this damage to you. I know I've hurt you.
Interesting. As opposed to the guilt, which is like this flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's a horrible feeling, but it's not long lasting.
That's right.
It's not going to take you a month or two.
That's
to
right.
To motivate you.
Yeah, and to go just a little bit further than that, we don't want to live in this place of shame and guilt, but even remorse is another stop along the way. I mean, we always want to feel remorseful, but we have to get to a place where we're solid in ourselves, where we are moving on with healing inside the inside parts of us. I don't know if you're familiar with IFS, Internal Family Systems.
No.
Great book called No Bad Parts.
Okay.
And it's this concept, and I don't want to get off topic here.
No, this is deep.
There's so many pieces of us that show up. We have our firefighters, okay? We have our managers, and we have our exiles. In the IFS world, it's these different parts of us that show up at different times.
Okay.
And sometimes we call those egos. So, for instance, you mentioned your wife. Nobody's messing with your wife.
Right.
Who do you think that is showing up? Is that a protector? Is that an identity you have that I'm the protector, right?
I don't know. I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's an ego you've developed that says, there's a whole set of rules around that. You won't talk to my wife that way. You won't touch my wife. I am going to protect her. That is an identity that you have created, and which probably stems from childhood. You may have seen somebody or got this idea that it's my job to protect. However that looks for you, right? So those parts exist good, but they also exist bad, right? So if you think about from that standpoint, those things can show up in good and bad ways. Yeah.
There's a helicopter going over us right now. It's okay. They're not searching for us.
We've got motorcycles and helicopters.
So that's the nature of a coffee shop. Yeah. That's all right. This is real and authentic, as we were talking about.
Right.
So you're saying that we have these different identities that stem from either early childhood or whatever, but what did it do for you? Like where the rubber meets the road?
Well, that's where when you mix those identities with delusional worldviews, right? So think about that. There has to be an ego that exists that believes pornography is good.
Oh, I got you.
That these women are wanting to sacrifice their body, and no child grows up thinking, I want to be a porn star.
Right.
I want to do this, that, and the other thing, and I may get paid for it. Maybe I'm being coerced. Like, there's an identity that believes that that's okay. And so when you really break it down, if that was your daughter doing that, do you think you'd be okay with it?
Wow. So this really is a battle of the brain.
It's a worldview. It's what I call worldview or delusional worldview. I shouldn't say I call it. I've learned all of this from some amazing
You're
teachers.
a very humble person, Jody. Yeah.
This is not me. I haven't invented any of this or come up with any of it. I have some amazing coaches and people and authors, and just, the information is out there, but being able to like as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of like this compartmentalization that allows us to pick apart all the pieces where we're lacking. And for me, it was in a lot of areas. So worldview, I had to tackle those, which includes entitlement. Like in a marriage, it's my wife's job to do X, Y, Z, right? That creates this entitlement.
Right.
And that becomes objectification, right? I'm objectifying my wife. Oh, I can see the wheels are turning there.
Okay.
Are you thinking, let me guess,
Yeah.
You're thinking, well, in a monogamous marriage, it is my job, my wife's job, right? Is that kind of where you were going with that in your brain?
I'm flipping back and forth between what the culture says is natural and normal and healthy, and then what from a biblical standpoint, which is grounded in science that I've seen confirmed over and over again, what is that sacrifice that you have for your spouse and your spouse has for you?
But it's not her job. And that's, I'm keying in on that word. In a truly connected I see you, you see me, which, by the way, Eckhart Tolle says, true love is one authentic self seeing the other person's authentic self.
Okay.
Right? So when you're in a connected relationship, marriage, where we have this intimacy, and intimacy means into you I see, okay? Then it's not a job. It's, I want this for my husband. I want to give him part of me. I want him to be, his needs to be met. But here's where that job can turn into problem. If he thinks his needs are, I need anal sex. That's my need.
I gotcha.
That's delusional.
I gotcha.
Because nowhere, no 5-year-old was born thinking, I need anal sex.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's super important to like start looking at all these pieces of us and what makes us us. So that's worldview. Is it delusional or not? My egos or my parts, my integrity. All those things are like what I call a recipe that makes a whole. If I'm making bread or a pie,
these are the
I can't leave out certain
in.
ingredients. It just doesn't make a whole thing. So
interesting. Okay,
that's right.
What physical things that you put in your life, whether barriers or tools, that have helped you stay clean?
Let's talk about barriers, and then I'll talk about tools.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between recovery and sobriety. Okay.
Okay.
Sobriety is I'm stopping the behavior. Right? Or my wife's put blockers on my phone and trackers on my phone so I can't do the behavior.
Right.
But that's not recovery. Recovery is I'm not doing the behaviors because they're not a story in my brain that is going, right? It's not a need that I have or am going for. So there's a huge difference between sobriety and recovery. And early on I was in sobriety. But that shifted to I'm in recovery, and that means I am not actively trying to stop myself from doing this behavior.
Gotcha.
Right? You know, think about it. You break an arm and you recover from that, and you recover. Your arm is no longer broken.
Sure.
And it's easy to kind of apply that to everything in life, but in the world of compulsive sexual behavior, those are pathways in your brain. If you think of a highway, that you know the quickest way to a dopamine hit.
Right.
You know, I'm bored, I'm sad, I'm stressed out, highway.
Right.
And so you don't grow grass up over those highways unless you're not using them.
Exactly.
Right? So the only way to not use them is to use tools that allow you to be in recovery. So you don't ever permanently recover. And that's, I think, one of the things that I struggle with in the beginning because, again, being a self-motivated person, I was kind of the mindset like, oh, I've done the work, I'm good. And I think what happens is, in my unprofessional opinion, is we set ourselves up for failure because we haven't really done enough deep work over enough period of time, and then the world happens around us. A parent dies.
I gotcha.
A child gets sick.
And then you just
COVID happens.
Relapse back into that.
And then you're back to like this frantic little child who feels hurt, unseen, unloved, unwanted.
Revert back to
and
those
there's that
pathways.
pathway.
There's
right
the
back
medication.
To Yep. So being in recovery is a constant process of work.
Is that what they say? Once an addict, always an addict? Would you not say that?
Well, they say that, and that's a bunch of BS.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
You have an opinion on this?
I have a very strong opinion on that. You can absolutely make long-lasting changes in your life simply by making the choice. Like for me, I live in integrity. I am vulnerable and authentic, and I live in that place. I refuse to be the person who will hurt my wife. Those are changes that are fundamentally to my core,
right.
And it's almost like a stance like I've taken in my life. Like I will not be that person. I constantly tell my wife, best husband ever, and I mean that with all true intention. Now, does that mean we won't make mistakes? Does that mean we won't slip? But here's the difference. If I slip, which I'm talking a little slip, I'm open and authentic to my wife and vulnerable and saying, honey, this is what's coming up for me. This is how I'm feeling. These are the emotions. When you said that, I felt this way. See, in the past, I didn't do that. I'd bury it down. I don't want to hurt my wife. I don't want to, whatever. And then it just builds. And so one of the best things one of my coaches once said to me, when we're feeling an emotion, a lot of times we push it away. That we don't like. Something that doesn't feel good.
Sure.
We push it away.
Suck it up, buttercup.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, what are we taught as little children?
Sure.
You get down, you get hurt. Oh, come on, get up. You're fine, right? So we learn to push our emotions away.
Sure.
Instead of pushing it away, invite it in. Like you're having coffee or tea with it. Like, oh, sadness, I see you. Come, let's talk. Let's sit with this. And what's making you sad? What is coming up for you?
Wouldn't you say it's a little dangerous to fixate on it like that and dwell on it?
No, not at all, because it's kind of like a meditation or putting the intentional effort into understanding why I'm feeling something.
This goes back to the authenticity. Yeah. It's like, be authentic with that, have integrity. Yeah. Like, this is real, don't deny it.
It's coming up for you. You're not controlling the fact that you're feeling sad about something.
Gotcha.
But let's be curious about it.
All right.
You don't have to dwell on it, but why am I feeling sad?
Okay.
Oh, well, my wife went and spent 5 hours with our son, and I'm feeling like she doesn't love me or want me, right? Well, where's that coming from? Well, as a child, I was left alone a lot, right? So kind of piecing all that together and trying to understand, because it has nothing to do with my wife spending time with my son.
Exactly.
It's something, a core wound that's inside of me.
Wow. Right? So I see what you mean. By giving yourself permission to analyze and dwell and identify these emotions and feelings, it will tell you a lot more about yourself, and therefore when you do start to act out, you're like, whoa, I've identified this trigger that happened 5 hours before, 10 days before, 2 weeks before, and this is just a domino effect. So once you identify that, you can kind of nip it in the bud and be authentic and real. Or
not nip it in the bud, just realize, like, understanding what's coming up for you, because sometimes there is no fixing. Like, I can't change the fact that I had an unavailable caregiver as a child. That's what made me who I am. But understanding what's going on with my feelings and emotions and applying it to how I'm feeling just kind of creates a connection. And it's never going to, I don't think it's ever going to be perfect or healed or fixed, or those emotions will always come up. But for me, the guy in the past didn't feel those emotions and feelings, right? I pushed them away for so long that I didn't know what they looked like, which kind of segues into what you had asked earlier about tools. What are your tools on your tool belt?
Yes, Jody, tell me how to have the best sex of my life. For everybody out there, give it to us.
Yeah.
And don't go into too much detail about intimacy with your own life, just generically speaking. How do we do it?
Well, it's all about swings and...
Wait a second. Okay.
No, let's talk about
People are
tools.
going to listen to this.
Yeah. Let's talk about tools. I have no swings.
Okay.
One of the biggest tools that made the largest impact in my life was what I call, or what maybe others call, self-care.
Okay.
The me in the past would wake up, hit the ground running, taking care of the kids, taking care of my wife. Then I go to work, take care of everybody at work, take care of the customers, take care of the employees. There was never any time for me in there, right? So it was this constant, like, running. And what I realized was, by not allowing space to take care of myself, by doing self-care, that I was running on overdrive, which I think, again, not an expert, is also an addiction, right? Because you're addicted to this feeling of being in an adrenalized state, of constantly going.
Right. So what's an example of self-care?
Yeah, so my self-care routine is praying.
Okay.
Taking time to pray, which is a form of meditation.
Right.
Were huge things that I found had a very large impact for me.
Okay.
But taking a shower, a lot of times,
interesting.
Simple things like I would skip showers one day, once in a while. But just it's that whole routine, and then of course journaling.
That's hard.
Journaling.
I don't want to sit down and write down my thoughts and emotions, Jody.
Reading. Filling your love cup. Like, the idea is, if we've got a bunch of holes in our love cup, which when you think about childhood trauma and all these things, your wife can pour in, your friends can pour in, and it's just draining right back out. So number one, plugging those holes, right? Let's plug those up, and that's different for everybody. There is no one-stop formula, right? There is no, it really starts with just realizing and learning, like, what are my needs? Are they real? Are they delusional? Like it's just a self-discovery process. But once you start to plug those holes, you have to fill your own love cup before you can really expect other people to fill your love cup.
Interesting.
Right?
I'll give you a tool that I've implemented in my own life that has been radically changed my journey towards sobriety, or rather recovery, if I were to use that word. Sleep.
Sleep's a big one.
I used to just burn the candle at both ends and say, I get all my best work done at 2 a.m. And I found that my inhibitions were lowered. My guard was down. So if I was fighting, this was the equivalent of being fatigued. And so I would drop my guard, and it was much easier for me to relapse when everybody had gone to bed and when I was tired. And it was almost like I was like, okay, I'm so exhausted, I just need a little release, and then that justifies going and acting out.
And you probably told yourself it would help you sleep.
Sure, right. Medically speaking, I just need to unwind. It makes so much sense. So sleep. And I used to feel guilty for telling people, I slept until 8 o'clock. And they're like, what? And now I'm like, yes, I slept until 9 a.m. Yeah. And at first, there's a little ping of shame, but now it's like, no. I am fueled up. I am ready for the day.
That's right.
Bill Clinton once said, I hate to use him as a moral example here, but he said this in as interviewed in the book 5 Hour Work Week. He said every single one of his most major mistakes he's ever made in his life, he can trace it back to not having enough sleep the night before.
Wow.
Now you could say, oh, that's just a cop-out, bro. Come on, just admit that you're morally unfit. Hey, that's got to say something, that if this president of the United States said, look, I pulled an all-nighter and the next morning I'm doing this with Monica Lewinsky, well, it's because his inhibitions are lowered. And you can go through so many people, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they all take afternoon naps. Jesus himself took naps.
Yes, he did.
In the middle of a storm.
Yeah.
So sleep has been huge for me, and almost giving myself that permission to schedule things later in the day. Like, no. You know what? We're going to start the podcast at 11 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. I could have said 7 a.m.
That's right.
But it wouldn't have been so good.
And it wouldn't have been good for you.
It wouldn't have been good for me.
Yeah.
So sleep has been one of my tools. Other tools that you've implemented?
For me, some of the biggest tools have been connection with other men.
Yes.
Yeah. Connecting.
100%.
Yeah, connecting, having a tribe.
Yes. As opposed to a little silo, and I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah, I'll tell you there's two things that have been big for me. Connecting to other men, learning to be vulnerable, right? Which those go hand in hand to me. And this isn't for everybody, and I understand it, but giving my problems to God has been absolutely monumental, because I was the guy that was living in a place of scarcity. Money is scarce. Sex is scarce. Time is scarce, and it drove all of these worldviews of, we don't have enough time for this. We got to do all these things, and it's just we don't have enough money. What do you mean you spent this on that? It just created all this behavior out of worrying about money and worrying about when we're going to have sex next and worry about how long I'm going to live. But when I gave it all to God and said, God, I'm trusting you. You are in control here. You will provide. You've always provided for me.
Right.
I have never gone without.
Right.
I've always had enough intimacy with my wife.
Sure.
I'm still alive and living, and today is today. I'm not going to worry about tomorrow. I'm not going to worry about the past. I use those as reference points, but I'm not going to dwell on them, right?
Precisely.
But giving it all to God has been so huge for my internal well-being.
Right.
So those two things, connecting with other men, and I do that in so many ways. I've got online groups that I meet via Zoom. I use a Marco Polo group with another group of men where we just check in with each other. I do in-person retreats. I just came back from Sedona, Arizona, where one of my men's groups meets a couple times a year. Phenomenal stuff. And then I've got local men that I meet up with in groups where, they have nothing to do with sexual compulsive behavior. It's just guys that are living life and sharing the good, the bad, their wins, the losses, their stresses, all of that stuff. Because I don't know if you're familiar with Maslow and Maslow's needs, but one of the big pieces of Maslow's needs is love and belonging, right? And so when we are, and I'm not great at Bible verses either, but that's all what Jesus is about, is that rock, that foundation, and bringing people together, right?
Yeah.
So
that was absolutely I would say, number one. Going all my life struggling with pornography, with addictions towards masturbation, towards, as you mentioned, worry about when am I gonna have my next intimate moment with my spouse?
Yeah.
Fixating on that. The number one thing, connecting with other guys.
Right.
Not necessarily with my wife. For the longest time, I used her as leverage, my accountability buddy, and it just wounded her more.
Yeah.
She had no idea. She internalized it. She's like, what's wrong with me and her? Yeah. When I would relapse or I would act out, and then I'd feel this guilt, and I'd go to her and I'd be like, hey, isn't it healthy that I'm 100% honest with you? And there's a difference between being honest with your spouse and connecting with accountability buddies, where there's other guys who know how I'm hardwired, because they're guys also.
Well, and your spouse has egos too, and they're going to feel attacked.
True.
But when you talk to me, I'm not attacked.
Right.
Oh, I'm here for you, bro.
Right.
Hug.
Exactly.
Right?
So to bounce that off of other guys, and I would say the number one barrier for me was this excuse of, I can't find a guys group. How do I get connected with other guys?
Yeah.
And that was an excuse
It's a huge barrier, though.
20 years.
Yeah.
I tried to connect with one accountability buddy, and maybe it would last 6-7 months and we'd be good, and it just fizzle out.
Yep.
So how would you answer that? How do you actually get connected for the long haul? Not just a quick little flash in the pan, but how do you get connected with a group of guys, for people out there who are wondering?
That's a great question. And people connect over common interests. So, I just discovered there's this whole world of pickleball, and guys just get together to play pickleball.
Okay.
That is connection, right? Doing something. Hiking. Go join a hiking club. People love to get outdoors. We're in the Pacific Northwest here. We love that, right?
Conversations on the trail.
It doesn't have to be around compulsive sexual behavior.
Gotcha.
I have those groups, but I also have people and groups that we're connected for one reason or the other through maybe a hobby that we love, right? Or something we're passionate about. Guys have car clubs or bowling clubs or whatever. Those are ways to connect. Maybe not as deep and vulnerable, but you don't limit yourself to one group either. There are some amazing, with the advent of the internet, which I firmly believe the devil controls and is his domain. So you got to be careful, right? But
unless we can push out fantastic podcasts through the then we will kick him in the teeth.
We're kicking his ass right now.
So the opposite of connecting with groups is, I would say, isolation. Which, speaking of Lucifer, Satan, he wants isolation. Right. He wants to separate that sheep from the rest of the flock.
That's right.
Which is why the Bible reminds us, don't give up meeting together. Continue to meet. And I see so many guys who are trying to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, and they keep failing. What's going on? Are you connected with a group of guys? Well, no, because, this is my sin, and it's that shame speaking to them. I can do this, and believe me, if there was a way to kick this physical dependency, I would have done it a long time ago. And it wasn't until I went to my church And I wasn't sure if I would be kicked out because we don't talk about this stuff from the pulpit. Like, it's just lust. We'll just sugarcoat it, Jody.
That's right.
And so I went to these guys and I was like, guys, I have issues. I am struggling. And I almost expected them to say, Bo, you run your own successful ministry. You've done it for 10 years. You have a healthy wife, family. You're an elder in the church. You've preached from the pulpit. Just pray more. Just read the Bible more. Just turn on praise music. Go on more mission trips.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to discount those things. Those are great things, absolutely. But what was missing in all of those was getting together with guys and being authentic with them.
That's right, yeah. And vulnerable.
And vulnerable.
Vulnerability
yes.
is the key to all of this.
Oh.
And it's, the problem is we can't go back and fix. We cannot go back and fix the way when we were feeling sad, hurt, and our parent just said, "Oh, come on, Bo, you get over it. You're fine. You'll be fine."
Yeah.
It's telling you not to trust your feelings. So then you get this conflicting message. So, especially as men, like, this is a great analogy I like to tell people, and a lot of my men in my men's group, I use this. When my 5-year-old daughter is riding a bike and she falls and she skins her knee, I go running over there like, "Oh my gosh, daughter, I'm so sorry." Like, I'm giving her this empathy. I'm acknowledging her feelings. Well, when my 5-year-old boy falls over and skins his knee, what do we typically default to? "Hey, come on, get up, dude. You're fine."
Yeah.
What are we telling him? Your feelings aren't okay. It's completely subconscious. So they start to disconnect at an early age.
Right.
You can't fix that. You can heal from it, but you can't fix it. And to me, the difference is that's where you get to invite connecting to yourself, your whole self. How am I feeling in my body? What's coming up for me? And just starting to reconnect. Because for me, what happened was empathy. I was lacking empathy for understanding, like, I modeled it in some areas, but especially like this defense part of me comes out when I've hurt somebody.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm thinking of me, my defense, blah, blah, blah. I don't even think about it. It's just an autopilot response. But learning to be able to show empathy to my wife when she would be triggered from, say, remembering something I had done, the early me would have been like, kind of that same response. Get over it.
Gotcha.
You'll be fine.
Gotcha.
It's okay. Why are we living in the past, right? Rather than, "Oh, babe, I'm so sorry I did that to you."
Right.
I don't like that part of me either that thought that was okay.
And that's a huge barrier with guys trying to be vulnerable with other guys. They think that's what the response is going to be. And I need to say, if anybody out there is listening to this, and if they get that response from their church, that's not a good church. Yeah. That church is from Satan. I'm just going to say it right there. But if it is like my church and they came around me and I said, "You know what, Bo? Not only do we acknowledge and sympathize with your issues here, we're going through it too." Yeah. Like, there were these guys twice my age who preached from the pulpit and they said, "We need healing too."
That's right.
It's like, bro, you're retired. You don't have the same sexual drive as me. What do you mean that you're addicted to porn also? And they're like, yes. So that was our core group of guys that started at my church. And it took me being vulnerable, going to them saying, "I need help." Yep. And we got together and I could name all 5 or 6 guys who gathered around in that living room. We went through a series called the Conquer series. Absolutely life-changing. It was only 9 to 10 weeks. And there were some exercises in there that required us to be vulnerable. Yeah. I'm going to share the worst one ever, which I hesitate to share this exercise because immediately people out there are going to be like, "I'm not going to be a part of this group." But I'm going to sell you on why it was so important. So currently we have another group. It's like the 5th group of Conquer series that we've started. And I'm a part of the text message exchange, so I know what they're going through. Right now, Jody, they have to list the top 10 worst moments of their entire life.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Top 10.
That's some deep stuff right there.
I would rather do 100 burpees in 7 minutes. I would rather do anything but go back and dwell on my top 10 worst moments. And what's fascinating about this exercise, and you don't do it until you're like 6 or 7 weeks into this course. Mm-hmm. So you've built a rapport with people, you have trust with these other guys. You're not just spouting it off on the internet, but you're listing these things. And the first maybe 4 or 5 things are pretty easy. They come to mind, like, yeah, I'd be okay with sharing that. And then you get to like number 6 and you're 7. And one of the indicators that it really is a limbic lie, it's a lie that's just been festering, is when you start the sentence with, I haven't thought about this for a long time. And then you go in and you articulate it and you share it with your group of guys. That one around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, those deep moments, those are the ones that absolutely have wounded me, that I need healing from. And after sharing these things with these guys, not one of them laughed and said, oh, yeah, no big deal, suck it up. Every single one said, as a matter of fact, there were more guys who said, I can relate to that. Yeah. I've been through that too. That's like, right. What? Yeah, that's my number 9 right here.
Right.
Like, wait, what? And there are guys talking about being abused, about like the things that, rule 34, rule 37 on the internet? It's a rule in the meme world that says, if you can think it, it exists on the internet. And usually it's really gratuitous, sexual-oriented things. Yeah. And these guys are sharing these things. And then once you get it out there and you're authentic, you're like, that wasn't so bad. I did it. Yeah. Whoa.
Feels good.
Yeah, it does feel good. It's like you can't heal the wound unless you can access it. And if you just keep putting calluses over this festering wound, and if you can't access it, it can't be healed. Yeah. And I can say that I am healed from those horrible situations in my life. So going through the Conquer series, I warn you, when you come to that, you can say, Bo warned me about listing the top 10 worst things. I'm not going to tell the other guys that this is coming, but be prepared. It is life-changing.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that I've, on the list of Maslow's needs, to kind of speak to what you were talking about, is the top one in the pyramid is self-actualization. And that is, why am I here? What is my purpose? And when you realize that, when you understand that, and that's why we're here today, because this is my purpose. This is why I want to. If I could have gotten to the 30-year-old me 20 years ago,
right,
my life would be totally different.
Right.
And here's the other piece of that is, our children today, our young male adults, are just, with access to internet and porn.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a generational problem that needs to stop. We've got to get control of this now.
And as I heard a pastor once say, this is one of those things where 70 to 80% of men in the church are actively addicted to it.
That's right.
And the church has absolutely no response.
Nope.
No idea how to deal with this.
That's right.
They just sugarcoat it as, well, it's just lust. Or as you said,
we're all sinners.
We're all sinners, yeah. Confess and then move on. And then they have absolutely 50% of pastors are actively addicted. 50%.
When I took my ideas to my pastor to start a men's integrity group, he was like, yeah, we need that. I have a porn problem.
Right, yeah. My heart goes out to them. It's like, let's do this together then. This should put a fire in your belly.
That's right.
So what are the next steps that guys need to do?
Oh, man, we've talked about a lot. So let's summarize. Number 1, take ownership.
Yes.
Right? Number 2, connect with other men.
Yes.
Just surround yourself with people who are going to be vulnerable and support you and love you for who you are. So that's really big. Number 3 is self-care. Take care of yourself, which includes not only learning and discovering and kind of playing investigator about yourself, but just, like you said, sleep. Simple things, man. Getting enough sleep. Those things are just, we need that. We need to rest and reset. And giving yourself grace. Those are all just some really important things to not live in a place of shame.
Outstanding.
So those are some of the big things. And In some of my men's group, I see a lot, and this is something I want to speak to. I see a lot of men that continually show up and say, "Oh, I slipped again today," and it's almost like this on repeat. And at some point, I call those men out and I say, you have an ego that believes somewhere that what you're doing is okay or justified. Like, you're giving yourself this outlet to do this. And you have to get to a place where you know that I don't want to support the sex trade industry. I don't want to hurt my wife. I don't want to betray my wife. I don't want to betray my authentic self. So those are some core pieces that you really have to wrestle with. And for me, this was the biggest thing that I came to the realization. I mentioned this earlier. I was a 12-year-old living in a man's body. And what I mean by that is I had to get to this point where I realized that in consciousness, I am the bus driver that is driving the bus.
Right.
Not the ego that needs a fix or a dopamine hit. Not the ego that feels hurt, wounded, unwanted. I am the driver of the bus. I can choose what I do with my body.
That exact same thing hit me too. My term is, it's time to put on my big boy pants.
Yeah.
It's time to grow up. It's time to stop dinking around. And I could say that I could live in regret, being like, man, I wish my 13-year-old self had these tools, had this wherewithal to go through, as you mentioned, those list of things of whether it's sleep or connecting with other guys. I wish that I had done that, but right now, you know what? I'm not going to live in regret of if I have given Satan an inch, it's war. The gloves are off and I'm taking back a mile for every single inch that I've given Satan throughout the years.
But also sit with the idea that it's made you who you are, and it's also giving you this ability to help others.
Right. As John Piper says, don't waste your cancer. Ooh, that sermon right there hits hard. Don't waste your cancer. Don't be like, oh man, I am a victim. I can't do anything with this. No.
I love that.
Leverage this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So looking forward to other podcasts. You're going to be having other experts and on here.
Yep, I'm going to be interviewing some of my coaches that have helped me through this process, other authors.
This is exciting.
Some amazing topics. We're definitely going to be talking about the concept of the abuser and the betrayed.
Wow.
That's a really hard, because in therapy, in today's world, we're starting to kind of come out of that mold of the past of it's this codependent, it's part her fault thing.
Yeah.
And there's some really good psychology around that. Yeah.
Looking forward to it, Jody.
All right, brother. Thanks for your time and your effort, your help, and I really appreciate you.
Love it. Till the next podcast.
All right.